Hello everyone, welcome. Let's see. Yes, I apologize for the short delay. My streaming software crashed just as I started the stream. So welcome. Thank you all for being here, and Merry Christmas to everybody. And so glad to see so many of you here again. Let me just adjust these settings. Right, bring up my software again. And yeah, so today I am going to be talking about Sharia law. I'm going to give you a preview of a presentation that I've been intensely busy with for some time now, which I need to present in January. As I said, it will be for a guy whose first name is Doctor, and whose surname is not Nike. And yeah, so would love to get your guys' feedback as we go through this. I need to demystify and explain what Sharia law is and explain its importance in Islam. I know it is slowly starting to gain traction. People are starting to investigate, people like Apostate Prophet, and I'm glad to see those efforts occur. Polish greetings from Ireland. Hello, Daro. Dobry wieczór. And Syrian Christian. Does the Sharia discuss predestination that allow? Okay, so to answer that question before we dive into this discussion, there are two elements within Islam. There's the law, but prior to the law, there are the articles of faith. So the faith is discussed in the Aqidah. So you need to look for those issues, those basic fundamentals of the faith within the Aqidah, and the legal aspects within the Sharia. I'm going to touch on that as we go forward. But those are things that I will touch on in the new year. I will start to go into that. I'm just juggling so many balls right now. Okay, so yeah, everything seems healthy and audio seems good. So guys, let me just go here. This is something that I need to do. This is a topic that I need to discuss in the future as well, the Islamic lobby. Now, I noticed that Dr. J. Smith and Mal have both, with Al-Fadi, it has been discussed with them as to why academics kowtow to Islam, why they seem to shy away from examining, asking the hard questions, or coming to hard conclusions about things in Islam, which would seem obvious to the rest of us. Welcome, Dragana. Good to see you here. Well, understand that American universities and these research organizations take a lot of money from the Islamic lobby. They take literally billions of dollars. And now I know that there's a huge thing within the truther community which does its best to slam Israel at every opportunity. However, once you start to look at the hard numbers, the hard facts, when you go into the actual numbers and you start to see how much money does the Islamic lobby spend versus how much money does Israel spend on lobbying the American government, for instance, where do they spend the lobbying money on? What projects? What kind of things? Right? How much money does the Islamic lobby have to spend in total versus Israel? You might realize that the Islamic lobby spends roughly 48 times more money than Israel, and they've got far more money to spend. So they spend billions of dollars pursuing their influence operations in American universities, and they're buying minds, right? They're buying minds. They're in the media. They're in the government. The idea of, oh, these are just poor little camel herders in caves. They've got no money. Well, when Muslims own the biggest mega yachts in the world, when they've got the most mega yachts, for instance, when they've got the most billionaires, you understand, when you've got this vast sea of money because of black gold, oil, understand the narrative changes, and this is something I need to tackle. This is an update of a presentation I did some years ago. I need to get back into this, but understand the Islamic lobby is invisible. It is incredibly powerful politically. It is very, very wealthy. And this is a topic that does not get discussed. I need to shed light on that. Okay, now let me cancel this and bring up the subject of today's talk. Okay, so let me just check the comments before I continue. Christian apologetics should start going to the Sharia. This torture is still... Agreed, Syrian Christian. I fully agree with you. Thank you for raising that point, that when you only study the Quran and the Hadith, you do not get the full picture. You get a tiny picture of Islam. It is not a sufficient picture of Islam. Now, I know that maybe I'm not qualified to speak, but, you know, because I'm not an imam, right? I'm not a scholar, as people or Muslims are going to be telling me all the time. However, neither are they. And two, I did live for 11 years in the Middle East. I did work in national security. I know that region. I know the people. I've been there. I didn't just meet a Muslim at a supermarket. I lived and worked amongst those people. I've traveled to a dozen Islamic countries. So, yeah, I know the region very well. I know the people. Moving on. So, why France shut down the Great Mosque? Obviously, they found guns in the basement. I mean, why else would they do that? They spread Wahhabism in my country with their money, and yes, they do. All right, guys, so we're going to be discussing Sharia, right? This is Islam's sacred law, or maybe we should call it Islam's secret law, right? So as I said, this is a run-through of material that I've just been rewriting. I've been hard at work. So your feedback will be valuable, and next year I will do an updated version of this presentation, a completed version of it, over a number of shows, I think, with hopefully with Dr. J. Smith. So touch on wood, because I do not want to jinx it. Sharia, sacred or secret? Now, I did say in the previous slide, it is the Islamic Talmud. And yes, it is. It is not a carbon copy of the Talmud, but it certainly derives its structure from the Talmud, and it does plagiarize and also inverts. Now, the Talmud is a subject we can discuss another day. However, notice that in the UK, in the US, there have been Sharia zones. Like here, you should remember this whole incident. The Sharia police that was walking around in various cities in the UK. You've got Sharia police. They've been driving around in the US. And Sharia for Britain, Sharia, the only option for the UK. Sharia will dominate the world. Sharia is the only... What are they talking about? Well, if you're asking, no, it's just the Quran. It's just... No, it's not. It's not just the Quran. It's not just the Hadith. It's just as people often take exception to the Talmud, they completely bypass the fact that Islam has the Sharia. The Talmud is a derivative from the Torah. The Sharia is the derivative of the Quran and the Hadith. Right. Now, so the question was, is Sharia sacred or secret? Well, it's secret. Now, this is one of the rulings from the Sharia, from the Ijma, which is the consensus of the scholars, the orthodoxy of Islam, the orthodoxy for all Muslims, according to its greatest scholars. It says, if a Quran is being purchased for someone, it is obligatory that the person be Muslim. The same is true of books of Hadith and books containing the words and deeds of the early Muslims. Quran in this context means any work that contains some of the Quran, even a slight amount. This ruling holds true for any religious books, even the Tabaqat of Shar'ani. And the Tabaqat is a collection of biographical sketches of Muslims. So it's a series of biographies, and according to Islamic law, even that is secret. You are an outsider, you are not privy to the secrets of the Muslims. Shar'ani is a very important scholar. His name will come up, not right now, but his name will come up. We will come across him now and again, and at some point I need to dive deep into that scholar. He's very, very important within Islam. So, Walla Johnson, welcome. Good to see you. Merry Christmas again, everyone. Kogito, Nathaniel. Now, there's a chapter in the Sharia called Holding One's Tongue. It's about keeping secrets. It's about knowing when not to speak. And it says, do not assist one another in sin and aggression. Now, understand, these meanings may be slightly ambiguous, right? But also, do not let your brother do something that would bring shame on Islam, right? That would break the law of Islam. So, for instance, speak of giving directions to wrongdoers, showing the way to policemen and tyrants when they are going to commit injustice and corruption. 2015, Bataclan massacre. Those men that committed that atrocity were in Molenbeek in Belgium for 2 months. No one, for a long time, told the police where they were. Why? Because they're following the Sharia law. Because showing the way to policemen when they're going to commit injustice and corruption. Why? Because those Muslims did not commit an atrocity. They were following the law of Allah. They were doing good. They were commanding the right, and they were forbidding the wrong. Understand? So, therefore, the policemen who would arrest them are the ones who were going to commit injustice. But also notice here, sin and aggression, right? Something that is wrong, where you must hold your tongue, is it is wrong to teach questions of sacred law to those learning it in bad faith. So right now I'm teaching it in bad faith, and you as my audience are learning it in bad faith, because you are not learning it to apply the knowledge in your lives, i.e. to become a Muslim, to become a better Muslim. Understand? You are learning it to undermine Islam. This is an illegal purpose. Let me continue. So for this talk in part 1, we want to start demystifying Sharia. We want to clarify what Sharia is in relationship to the Quran and the Sunnah being the Hadith and the Sirah, right? We want to show where is the Sharia law found, right? We want to detail the terminology and the rulings that make up the Sharia. We want to define its role in Islam. We want to identify Islam's major doctrines. Again, as Syrian Christians said, we should learn the Sharia. Christian apologists need to learn the Sharia and understand what it is, how it actually supersedes Quran and Hadith. However, we also need to get off the idea of this verse says and that verse says. You know how Muslims will say this verse says ad nauseum? They'll pick one verse, 20 words, and they'll claim that this defines Christianity, this defines God, this defines the Bible. And you want to tear your hair out trying to explain to them that no, you cannot just take that verse, stand alone, and say this is the Bible, right? Or this is Christianity. Because they don't understand the doctrine. They don't understand the church doctrine that is derived from that, the understandings that are derived and the actions that follow from that, in terms of how do you apply that within the life of the Christian? How do you apply that in the life of the church, within the community? We need to understand that Islam has doctrines derived from these verses, from these passages. Okay? Now, we also want to address misconceptions about the Sharia, right? Correct world changer. They mislead people by saying this verse says. Now, we need to stop doing the same. We are doing the very same. We're annoyed when they do it, when they pick a verse and distort it. We need to do this. We need to stop doing the very same thing that they're doing, because we are guilty of doing the same thing. We need to go into the doctrine, okay, the fundamental structure of Islam. And Kogito says Sharia gives women the right to carry. Yeah, sure. Okay, now we want to address misconceptions about the Sharia. We also want to show Islam's divisions, the levels, and the authority structure. And again, understand this is a fault. This is a blind spot in Protestantism. And I say this as a Protestant. The Catholic Church has an authority structure, right? It has your Pope and has your bishops and so on and so on and so on. You've also got your traditions derived from the early church. You've got the traditions, and these traditions have been derived due to certain thinking processes. And now you've got tradition, and then you've got the Bible. Protestants, basically, because of Martin Luther, tossed the baby out with the bathwater, retained the Bible, right? And they fail because of that blind spot. We follow the Bible only. So many Protestants are Quran-only Christians. Just like Quran, all these Muslims become Quran-only Muslims when you show them a hadith that's embarrassing, when you show them the Sharia, they all become Quran-only Muslims, while Protestants become Quran-only Christians exactly the same way, because they often deny and reject the traditions of Christianity, the authority structure, right? And they say, well, I follow the Bible only. Well, okay, so do I. So when you disagree, well, what happens is you get 40,000 Protestant churches. Right? Because who's the right one here? Okay? But understand, Islam has a very tight authority structure. And they actually follow that authority structure because the Protestant church doesn't believe in that. They're blind to the fact that it exists in Islam. Just like it does in the Catholic Church, it does in Islam as well. But you don't see it because they think Quran only, Bible only. Understand, these are not synonymous. They do not work the same way. You need to understand there's a very strong authority structure. There is very strong tradition that runs through Islam. Syrian Christian said Martin Luther was a disgusting demon. Look, at the risk again of upsetting people, when I do my discussion, when I unpack Martin Luther, you're going to see Martin Luther was an evil man. He was a disgusting man. He was a heretic. He was a liar. He was vain, corrupt, arrogant. I cannot tell you, the things I've learned about Martin Luther upset me. It's crazy. So, but that is a story for another day. I have to sit down, do all of that work, and show you. Okay? But understand, I have lost all respect for Martin Luther. Now, examine how, when, where, and why the Sharia was created. Hi, Sergeant Grinch. Welcome, KC. Hello, RJ. Right, we want to trace the historical and political development of the Sharia. We also want to compare, to some degree, the Sharia versus the Talmud Bavli, the Babylonian Talmud, right? Nathaniel, worst of all, he was German. Well, yeah, we need to talk about the historical impact of Martin Luther, which is nothing good, nothing good. And then, of course, we want to discuss the plagiarism from the Talmud, right? How Islam borrowed from the Talmud, but two, how it inverted many of those laws that are in the Talmud in creating the Sharia. And then also we want to discuss its importance, the Sharia's importance as the final product of Islam. It is the will of Allah, and it is to be imposed upon the world by persuasion or by force. Right. So, some major sources, of course, this is one of the major academic sources that I'm using, the Four Roots of Islamic Law and the Talmudic Counterparts, right, by Judith R. Wegner, and also was al-Shafi, the master architect of Islamic jurisprudence, by Wael B. Halak. These are both very respected academics. Wael B. Halak is well known. He is an apologist for Islam, so therefore anything that he says needs to be taken with a slight grain of salt, maybe a few bags, right? But understand, he's a very, very good scholar, knows his stuff very well, but you need to be able to read between the lines and understand he's an apologist and he's going to skew things in the favor of Islam. Then, of course, the Reliance of the Traveler, the Umdat al-Salik, the classical manual of Islamic sacred law. This is it here. This is your most important resource of them all. And the Hedaya. Then, of course, I'm using the Brill Encyclopedia of Islam, the Brill Encyclopedia of the Quran, and the Digest of Muhammadan Law, and, of course, Ghazali's famous Ihya Ulum al-Din. Right. So we'll start with Quran 42:13. He has laid down for you the same deen, the same way of life and belief, which he had commended to Noah, and which we have enjoined on you, and which we had bequeathed to Abraham, Moses, and Jesus, so that they should establish the religion and not be divided among themselves. It is obligatory to act according to the Sharia of the Prophet and to abstain from that which was abrogated from the Sharia of Jesus. Al-Sharani. We just mentioned Sharani a little earlier, the Tabaqat of Sharani. This is a very important scholar within Islam. Okay, so understand, Allah told Muhammad that he has established the same deen. The word deen does not mean religion. The same deen which he had given to Noah, which he had given to Abraham, to Moses, and to Jesus, which obviously by extension the Jews and the Christians distorted, right? Because Islam differs from Christianity, differs from Judaism, therefore we are wrong, they are right. Okay, deen means system, Syrian Christian says, and that is true. Now, a small caveat from Judith Wegner. Severe limitations are imposed by the scarcity of early Islamic legal material and the complete lack of pre-Islamic Arabian legal texts. Very convenient that there's almost nothing from the early period of Islam. But then research is further hampered by the probability that doctrinal considerations led to the expunging, that is the deletion, of any references to foreign sources from the early legal texts. So here you've got one of the top scholars of the subject telling us that there seems to have been a systematic purging of all foreign sources, of all evidence that Sharia law is derived from other earlier sources. That's very suspicious, but take that in mind. So in Hebrew, the word means justice. Thanks. So let me see. Okay, so we'll continue with that. So now, from Arab legal culture to the Talmud. So how do we get from A to B? Well, Islamic law developed beyond region-specific Arab customary laws in the 8th and 9th centuries with the jurisprudential basis of the Babylonian Talmud. So what that means is, thank you XYZ, yeah guys, hit the like, please do share, and please send Christmas presents, okay guys, just you know, send those Christmas presents. I'll drop an address in the chat later. So what happened was you had regional law developing in small geographical regions based on custom, based on geography, based on culture, etc. However, the Sharia needed to unify that because when you traveled through the Muslim lands at the time, you had completely different rulings and ideas. There was this complete disconnect, right, between all these different groups. So they had to unify these groups under a single set of laws. Yeah, guys, please do jihad in the like button. Hit it until it's blue, okay? Take nothing less. Now, Jewish and Islamic law are theocratic legal systems resting on the concept of divine law revealed to a prophet in a scripture. For Jews, that scripture is the Torah. For Muslims, the Quran. Rabbinic law developed during the first 5 centuries AD, culminating in the editing of the Talmud in the 6th century. The Talmud distinguishes civil law, moral law, and ceremonial law. Now it has evolved, it has modernized, right? Islamic law developed during the 7th to the 9th centuries, culminating in the classical theory of Islamic jurisprudence in the 9th century. It does not separate mosque and state, and it only finished its full development in and around the 14th century. So the major work was done up to the early part of the 11th century, late part of the 10th century, but really some of the major manuals were only written somewhere in the 14th century with some of these scholars. Right, so that's where the Sharia basically established itself, and the ideas, the legal theory, was finally encompassed every aspect of Islamic civilization. Now there are strong Talmudic parallels with the legal theory of Imam Shafi, with a borrowing, quote unquote, of fundamental concepts from the Talmud Bavli, that's the Babylonian Talmud mentioned up here. Now, given the relative scarcity of legal provisions in the Quran, which was not intended to be a comprehensive law code, this, of course, was inevitable. Cogito Allah is a little slow, but that also tells us that the Sharia took hundreds of years to develop, very much like the Talmud, which took like 500 years to develop. So now you've got from like the 800s, let's say from the late 700s, through to the 1100s, you've got hundreds of years of development of the Talmud, of the Sharia. So, the Mujtahid Mutlaq Shafi. Imam Shafi says to us, the Quran texts are couched in very general terms, which it is the function of the Sunnah to expand and elucidate, to make Allah's meaning absolutely clear. This is quoted in John Burton's The Sources of Islamic Law. So in Christian, you have a point. Now, understand, Imam Shafi, one of the finest scholars of Islam to ever live, does tell us that the Quran is not sufficient on its own. It's not clear enough on its own. Now, what we learn in the Sharia is as follows: that Christianity is abrogated, it is replaced. This is in section W4 of the Reliance of the Traveler. It's on the finality of the Prophet's message. This section has been translated to clarify some possible confusions among Muslims as to Islam's place among world religions. Previously revealed religions were valid in their own eras, as attested to by the Quran, but were abrogated by the message of Islam, as is equally attested to by many verses of the Quran. Both points are worthy of attention from English-speaking Muslims who are occasionally exposed to erroneous theories advanced by some teachers and Quran translators that affirm the validity of these religions, but denying or not mentioning their abrogation, or that it is unbelief, it is kufr to hold, for a Muslim to hold that the remnant cults, that's what you believe, that's Christianity, now bearing the names of formerly valid religions such as Christianity or Judaism, are acceptable to Allah after He has sent the final messenger to the entire world. This is a matter of which there is no disagreement among Islamic scholars. Ishaq Yusuf, Sharia law and Jewish halakha law go hand in hand? No, they don't. No, they don't. There are similarities, there are parallels. They're certainly not identical. In terms of a moral basis, they are utterly different. In terms of an intellectual basis, they are vastly different. Now, if an English-speaking Muslim, at times discuss it as if there were some questions about it, the only reason can be that no one has offered them a translation of a scholarly Quranic exegesis, a tafsir, to explain the accord between the various Quranic verses and the agreement with the Sunnah. Islam is the final religion that Allah will never lessen or abrogate until the last day. Now understand, there are subtleties here. First of all, Judaism, Christianity are remnant cults. Look, this is the official doctrine of Islam. Muslims love to push the idea that there is no orthodoxy, there's no Pope of Islam, that there is no single point that all Muslims can rally around, that there's no orthodoxy. If there is no orthodoxy, how can they claim that ISIS is wrong? How can they claim that they are right? If there is no orthodoxy, then it's a free-for-all. Anyone can pick up the Quran, pretend that he's a scholar, claim that this verse says that, and Bob's your uncle, understand? Then there would be nothing but confusion. This is where the Sharia comes in. It creates that orthodoxy. It is the orthodoxy. It is the final interpretation of the Quran and the Sunnah. Now, no one has offered them a scholarly exegesis, a tafsir. What they imply here is that a scholar needs to walk them through that tafsir, needs to explain that. Now understand that Muslims by default are only allowed access to the Quran and some hadith, right? And anything beyond that, they need to be guided by an imam. So, but also do understand that the hadith, no scholar of Islam reads the hadith as they are. They do not pick up Sahih Bukhari like you do. They do not pick up Sahih Muslim like you do. That is not what scholars do. The scholars go to the tafsir of the hadith. Just as they mention here, tafsir of the Quran, they are tafsir of the hadith. The scholars read the tafsir of the hadith. Do you have a copy of the tafsir of the hadith? Raise your hand if you do, because no, you don't. I know you don't, because I don't have one either. They do not give them to us. They're not available to us. Unless you read Arabic, they're off limits. Unless you read Urdu, they're off limits to you. Okay, there's very, very little available. The most famous of these tafsir of the hadith is by Imam Asqalani, okay, called the Fath al-Bari, Imam Hajar al-Asqalani. Understand? So, Syrian Christian, I love how shame wasn't of the Sirah, even though the Sirah is also part of the Sunnah. Exactly. They're incredibly ashamed of the Sirah. Now you know the status of Christianity within Islam. Now, Islam has two purposes. There are two critical verses we must look at. Quran 4:157 tells us Islam's religious purpose. They said in boast, we killed Christ, Jesus, the son of Mary, the messenger of Allah, but they killed him not, nor crucified him. It was made to appear to them. And those who differ therein are full of doubts and with no certain knowledge, but only conjecture to follow, for of a surety they killed him not. Now understand, this verse it's one verse, it's maybe 30, 40 words. This verse has become major doctrine within Islam. There are whole books dedicated to exegeting this verse. Now, what we as Christians do, what we as scholars do, or what we as atheists do, what we as whatever, agnostics, academics, we take a verse and we pretend to do exegesis of a verse. The Muslims completed this exegesis 1,000 years ago. They completed detailed exegesis of the minute meanings of everything 1,000 years ago, and we fail to go to those sources and see what the absolutely the best minds, the Einsteins, the Newtons of Islam, right? These would be the retarded Einsteins and the retarded Newtons, but I digress. Have to say about this, right? Now, Islam rejects, you'll recognize that Islam rejects and it seeks to correct the gospel. It wants to correct the crucifixion, the death and resurrection of Jesus, and replace Jesus with Muhammad. Okay, so Sergeant Grinch says the lack of transparency in Islam causes problems for the Abduls when they want to know about their own cult. Yes, but that is deliberate. It is not an accident. That is deliberate. Now, we have Islam's political purpose, which is commanding the right and forbidding the wrong. Quran 3:104 is possibly the most important verse in the Quran. Understand? Let there rise out of you a group of people inviting to all that is good, enjoining what is right, and forbidding what is wrong. This is the fundamental basis for a doctrine. Again, you will find lectures that run for hours. You will find books, hundreds of books. You will find discussions, debates, centuries-long debates by Islamic scholars discussing that verse. We look at the verse and go, well, I think this verse means. And meanwhile, the Muslim scholars are laughing at you because they've got literally millions of words written about it already, which we can just go to those references and see what they say. So understand, commanding the right and forbidding the wrong is the fundamental doctrine. It is the bedrock doctrine of Islam. It guides the Ummah's socio-political behavior and their agenda. And remember, Sharia is binding upon non-Muslims. Let me just catch up. Satan tried to deceive people into thinking Jesus wasn't crucified. Exactly. Well, the thing is, so you know that they say Satan's greatest trick was to convince people that he didn't exist. Well, Satan's other great trick was to convince people that the Sharia doesn't exist. Unfortunately, there are many, many Christians, many people that think the Sharia is not real. So let's see the main work. Okay, so the majority of Muslims have no idea about the material presented yet. That would be true to some degree, XYZ. Sinclair's Law. So Muslim and scholar, another oxymoron, exactly. Right, so moving on from this now, statistics. Right, so remember, this is new material to me as well. I mean, I know it fairly well, but these slides are new, so this is my test run, right, for next year, so that I know that I've structured this well. So we have roughly 35%. Now look, you go to a different set of data, they'll give you different numbers. I eventually picked these because these seem right to me, but seriously, the Malikis, if the Malikis could put 99% here, they would, because, yeah, okay? So understand that depending where you go, you're going to find different numbers, but we'll just go with these for now. So the Hanafis, Sunni Muslims, 35% of Muslims are Hanafis, 25% are Shafis. They follow the Shafi school. The Shia Muslims will ignore those for now. They're 20%, could be 15, could be 10, could be 8, could be 9, could be 7, you pick a number. The Malikis, 15%, the Hanbalis, 4%, and the Salafis, 1%. This number of the Hanafis being 4%, this number is consistent wherever you look. You see this as consistently mentioned at 4% for the Hanbalis. These are the four main schools of Islam, and of course within the Shia Muslims they recognize the Jafari school. Now let's look at the basic orthodoxy known as the Aqidah. Right, this was formulated in the 9th century. Aqidah refers to those matters of faith which are believed in with certainty and conviction, absolute conviction in one's heart and soul. They are not tainted with doubt or uncertainty. Right. Oh, interesting. Hanafi comes from the Syriac word Hanpa, which means pagan in Syriac. You know what? I'm going to put that... Sorry, I've got to look that up. I need to look that up to see if that's legitimate. Thank you very much for that, but I need to look that up. Okay? So, the Aqidah, these are the basic, fundamental articles of faith, which must be believed in with certainty, without doubt. They must be accepted. Okay, there's a reason they must be accepted, because there are some things they don't have answers for, and therefore you just have to go like, okay, yeah, fine, whatever. Now, like the Nicene Creed, the Aqidah establishes the orthodox beliefs of Islam and refutes deviations. It is the foundation of the faith. The Aqidah consists of matters which are known to the Quran and sound hadith, in which the Muslim must believe in his heart in acknowledgement of the truth of Allah and his messenger. Okay? Now, popular statements of basic Sunni Islamic doctrine or articles of faith are the Aqidah al-Tahawiyya, the Ash'ari Creed, and the Maturidi Creed. They're also known as just the Creed. They're just the Creed. Now, the popular ones you'll see are the Ash'ari Creed and the Maturidi Creed, but just to be difficult, I'm going to have a look at the Aqidah al-Tahawiyya. Now, some will tell you that this is the Salafi Creed. Ignore that, it's Sunni. And, yeah. So, and also note that Aqidah, the creed, is a primary science of Islam. It is one of the primary sciences of Islam. Now, within the West, we think of science as a hard science, as experimental science, as, you know, science, like we all know science. Unfortunately, that is secondary, if not tertiary, within Islam. Science is religious sciences. Understand? So your belief is a science to them. Right? And so we'll have a look at the Aqidah al-Tahawiyya. So, okay, now, these are three of the tenets of the Aqidah. And we follow the Sunnah of the Prophet and the congregation of the Muslims and avoid deviation, differences, and divisions. There's nothing here that an Orthodox Sunni would disagree with, because this is perfectly normal Sunni belief. That Muslims follow the Sunnah of the Prophet and the Ummah, okay, of the Muslims, and they avoid deviation, differences, and divisions. We love the people of justice and trustworthiness, that would be Muslims, and hate the people of injustice and treachery, that's you. Right? And of course, who they deem hypocrites. And notice number 75 here. When our knowledge about something is unclear, we say, Allah knows best. Now, earlier I was talking about tradition. Understand, this term, Allah knows best, is not something random. This is part of their belief. It is part of their foundational, fundamental belief. They have to say this, because there are things that are unclear for which they have no answers, and the only answer they can give is Allah knows best. Because their science doesn't allow them to be scientific and find answers, formulate answers, because they've chosen myth over fact. They've chosen will over logos. Moving on. Now, faith aside, Islam is a religion of law. Thus, we have two basic questions that follow from this. What are the laws of Islam, and where are they written? Now, this book, rather, it's a paper, it's a research paper. XYZ, that is true. The Muslims' ultimate fallback. Allah knows best. But understand, it is part of their science to say that. That is the Islamic science. It's one of their critical sciences to actually say that. And it's part of their creed of faith. Imagine the Nicene Creed says, Allah knows best. I mean, we would consider that ridiculous. But Pakistani courts in Islamic law and Quran 65:4. This is a paper written by two professors of law in Pakistan. When I showed someone this recently, he told me that Pakistanis aren't real Muslims. Believe it or not, I was very, very surprised to learn that Pakistanis are not real Muslims. It's all 40 million of them, I guess, or whatever. Okay. Cogito Ergo says Islamic science tells you that the cure for COVID is found on the wing of a fly. Yeah, guys, cough on a fly, dip the one wing in your tea and then dip in the other wing, and Bob's your uncle, because the cure is on the other wing. Now, on the basis of exploratory analysis of the reported cases, the following books are found to be relied upon more frequently by the courts to derive what is an authentic point of Islamic law on a particular issue. The Hedaya, the Digest of Muhammadan Law by Sayyid Amir Ali, and Principles of Muhammadan Law by Dr. D.F. Mullah. Now, understand, if Sharia doesn't exist, why are these books being used in the court system in Pakistan, which, as we all know, is an Islamic republic, the Islamic Republic of Pakistan? So, of course, they're not a caliphate yet, so they haven't ditched their secular legal system fully in favor of, right? Fully in favor of the Sharia, right? Hi, Andrew. Welcome. Good to see you. Thank you. Yeah, this the archive, the Fat al-Bari. So guys, in the description, you will find, I've got a Dropbox link that says some useful files. Go to the description box, go to the Dropbox link, and you'll find the Fat al-Bari that I'm referring to there. It's very useful. Go to page 12. Very useful. Now, this paper is called The Genealogical Analysis of Islamic Law Books Relied on in the Courts of Pakistan. Okay, so Islamic law does seem to exist, and we've got two. Merry Christmas, Andrew, and yeah, Zakar, welcome. So understand, this is my two law professors. So Shahbaz Ahmad Chima, professor, PhD, ResearchGate profile says he's at the University of the Punjab and at University Law College, and Sameh Ozer Khan, assistant professor at the Law College. So these are legitimate guys. You can look them up. Now, this is the Digest of Muhammadan Law. That is the second reference. I'm going to skip the first one for now. Right, I won't be doing that unless I do a different show directly on that. Happy New Year, guys. You too, Andrew. Thank you. And so this is the Digest of Muhammadan Law. Okay, we'll see the date here is, okay, this thing was stamped out at the library in 1935. So yeah. Now, this is one of the rulings within the Digest. When a man has had sexual intercourse, with a girl under the age of 9 years, and he has ruptured the parts, in other words, he has torn open her vajayjay, it is unlawful for him to have further sex with her, but she's not released from her ties if connected with him by marriage or by slavery. If no rupture, if her vajayjay has not been ripped open, the prohibition is not incurred, according to the most valid opinion of the scholars. Right, this is a book that the Pakistani legal system, the court system, relies upon. Let's have a look. This is now confirmed within the reliance. So we go to the reliance of the traveler. We're discussing a woman's post-marital waiting period, the iddah, and it does say in section N 9.1, there is no waiting period for a woman divorced before having had sexual intercourse with her husband. This relates to this verse here. As for your women who have despaired of further menstruating, if you are in doubt, their waiting period shall be 3 months. And those who have not menstruated yet, so 3 months, and for those who have not menstruated yet. So what does it mean, those who have not? Right, ever? Yes, exactly. It is disgusting. Well, let's have a look and see what else we are told here. So in N9.2, we learn a waiting period is obligatory for a woman divorced after intercourse. whether the husband and wife, that's the woman referred to here, are prepubescent, have reached puberty, or one is prepubescent and the other is not. So yeah, no wonder every single time that I ask a Muslim to come on and discuss Sharia with me, they all make excuses, right? Now, Cogito, Islam did pick all the grossest stuff to make it legal. Understand, it is very much an inversion of the Talmud. Now, people can say what they like about the Talmud, and I'm willing to bet I know the Talmud a lot better than they do. Far, far better. Just as I know the Sharia. I know the Sharia much better than I know the Talmud, but I am no slouch at the Talmud. So, and understand, intercourse means copulation, right? This is not further corroboration. This is the exegesis of this. Now, we can obviously make logical deductions, but this whole section, there's like pages of this. Understand, there are pages, there are dozens of rulings on this, where we can go into detail, applying it to every possible permutation and situation that they face. Let's have a look at this, the Heavenly Ornaments, the Bahishti Zever, volumes 1, 2, and 3. Again, go to my description box, go to the Dropbox link, find it there. This is Fiqh to educate women, according to Wikipedia. It's called the Jewels of Paradise, or the Heavenly Ornaments. For years, it has remained a favorite with the people of the Indian subcontinent, as well as the Indian Muslim diaspora all over the world. So this is very popular in India. It's very popular with Muslim Indians. If a person has sexual intercourse with a minor girl, ghusl will not be obligatory. That's obviously ritual ablution. Will not be obligatory on her. But in order to get her into the habit, she should be made to bath. Zahar, wow. Oh my gosh, thank you very much. I'm very grateful. Thank you. Yeah. Wow. Thank you. So, if a person has sexual intercourse with a minor girl, minor, understand, they don't mean under 18 here, okay? So, woman includes child because the child is married. Exactly. Exactly. Wow. Thank you. Wow, I'm just stunned. Thank you very much, Zahar. So, now, if a woman is underage, but not so small that if one has intercourse with her, there is a fear of the vaginal tissues tearing to such an extent that the vagina and anus will virtually come together, then by the insertion of the glands of the penis into her vagina, ghusl will become obligatory. Fard is obligatory on the man if he has reached the age of puberty. However, if there is the aforementioned fear in a very minor girl, then the mere insertion of the penis does not render. Yeah, you guys figure that out. And finally, if a person whose testicles have been cut off inserts his penis into the back part of anyone or the vagina of a woman, ghusl will be fard on both of them if both are mature. Alternatively, it will be obligatory on the one who is mature. So yeah, when you extrapolate that, you obviously learn that, well, they are talking here about girls who are minor, who are underage. There's more that can be said. I can go into other books, but this is quite sufficient, right? These are from 3 books of Islamic law. So understand, this is what the Islamic law teaches, and what has been established in the book that is valid in Pakistan is now established in other books. Understand? So yeah. Now, Islam is a deen. It's a socio-political system, not a religion. Nathaniel says, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot. Why talk about ritual cleansing after obliterating the genitalia of a young girl? Nathaniel, one would be led to think that their priorities are a little off, wouldn't you? You'd think that they'd have other things to think about at that point, but like calling 911, I don't know, but it seems like it's not a problem. So the one that is immature, that doesn't know how to bathe, yeah, she's too young to know how to use soap and a sponge. Maybe she's a little young at that point in her life. So yeah, that is just disgusting. Now, understand, a deen is a socio-political system. It is a totalitarian socio-political system. It is not a religion. So deen embodies perspectives on existence, that's your akida, your life, society, and socio-political system, governance. Right? Islam is a complete and a competing ideology and a system of life and society, like communism. Right? A political ideological system. For Muslims, Islam is a superior ideology that towers over other isms like capitalism and the resultant socio-political systems. It is a political framework for managing mankind's affairs. It's a socio-pathological system. That's a very good point, Kagito. It's socio-pathological, correct. It is, right? And this is governance. It is human governance. Now, the linguistic meaning. The famous classical Arab dictionaries, Al-Qamus al-Muhit and Lisan al-Arab, the tongue of the Arabs. This one is 20 volumes. It's highly respected. It's the oldest and the most respected of the Arabic dictionaries. States that there are 4 meanings of deen. 1, the first meaning, the first level of meaning, the primary meaning is subjugation and dominance, right? It discusses ownership, government, so you are owned, government, administrative or legislative authority. This is civil law. It is not ritual law. It is not moral law. It is, well, Islam combines civil, moral, and ritual law, right? There's very little distinction between them, whereas, of course, we make these differences. Within Judaism, they make the differences between the ritual, the moral, and the civil law. And of course, in Christianity, we only have the moral law. Jesus did not legislate parking tickets and how to, give fines to people. So, ownership, government, administrative or legislative authority. 2, obedience and bondage. This is the second level of meaning of a deen. Subordination and dominance under the power of others, being dominated under the power of others. Now, rules and regulations. Doctrine, ideology, tradition, or religion. Now, depending how you count this religion is 10th or 11th on the list. You could make it 14th, depending how you count this. Now, understand, first you have subjugation and dominance with these layers of meaning here, and the necessary rulings under each. Obedience and bondage, subordination and dominance under the power of others. So that would be warfare. And then rules and regulations. Doctrine, ideology, then tradition, then comes religion. Or, it doesn't say and religion, it says or religion. It can mean religion, it also cannot mean religion. It's optional. Do you understand that? I mean, this is optional. Yeah, Sergeant Grinch. Yeah, I'm sorry, did 77 grain freedom pills solve these issues? Dude, sometimes it's like, yeah, it just makes you want to make someone 2 grams heavier, doesn't it? But what can I say? Okay. Reward and repayment. So notice, just before this, reward and repayment with justice and accountability, right? So justice and accountability come just before religion. So the first meaning is subjugation or dominance, administrative or legislative authority to put pressure to be obedient, using power to enslave or to make one obedient. In Arabic, Tentuhum fadanu means I subjugated them so they obeyed me. It means I ruled or governed upon him. The word dayan is used to indicate a person who dominates and rules over a state. So Islam is first a method of ruling a state. It is a political system, a totalitarian, pathological political system, ruling over a state, a nation, or a tribe. That is the very first level of meaning. It's a method of government. It's like communism. Then the second meaning is obedience and bondage, subordination and domination. This is from the Lisan al-Arab, okay, the top dictionary. By someone and bearing humiliation under subjugation and power of others. The obedient tribe is called Qawmun Dainun. Here, al-Din does not mean religion, it means obedience. The first 2 layers of meaning here have nothing to do with religion, nothing. Then, within the third layer, religion is, if it does come up, the last of 4 additional tenets. Understand? So, Islam is a deen. It is all of these. You are here. You are stuck here. You are led here by the dawah and you've gotten stuck here. Understand, it is this, 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 it is this. Then, in 10th place, it is this. You are stuck here. Imagine this was your ankle. You are focused on the ankle. You are missing the rest of the body. Okay, Dragon, thank you very much. So understand, the whole point of their dawah is to get you to miss everything above this level. It is not just a religion. If it was just a religion, we could compare it to the Bible and But you know and I know that Islam is about law. Law is how you run a country. Okay, so Veronica says brainwash is missing in the list. For sure, brainwashing and yeah, this Clark says, I feel the censorship going on today, especially this Islamophobia nonsense. The entire world needs to learn the truth about Islam, which Muslims will never tell you. Exactly. I went through many, man, I've read through so many papers, academic ones, Islamic ones. I have watched talks on Sharia law, which were, I'll tell you now, all of them are just nonsense. I watched one given at Duke University. You can go to Princeton, you can go to whatever, but I just watch. It is waffle. It's trash. It's trash. All of it is trash. Every video on YouTube, okay, it's just trash. They're not telling you anything. They're hiding. But understand, you are here, guys. You need to maybe get off 10th position and move up to the top. You may want to do that. Now, what is the purpose of the law? So Islamic law deals with two broad aspects of regulation. Laws dealing with man's duty to Allah are called ibadat. Basically, these would fall under the 5 pillars of Islam: the profession of the faith, the shahada, prayer, fasting, almsgiving, and pilgrimage. Remember, 1/8 of almsgiving of your zakat goes to jihad. Generally, these ideas are dealt with first in the fiqh books. Then you have the laws governing human relations called mu'amalat, or transactions. It's really transactional law. For instance, within Christianity, marriage is a sacrament. In Islam, it's a transaction. It's a commercial transaction. Okay? Marriage, divorce, commerce. See, marriage and divorce fall under the same rubric as commerce, of all things. It's just a transaction. Ibadat. Now, going to the Encyclopedia of Islam. Islam is like hide and seek. No, it's all hide. It's all hide. Yeah. So, ibadah. Okay? Submissive obedience to a master. So understand, ibadat is translated as submissive obedience to a master, and therefore religious practice. So your religious practice is to be submissively obedient to a master. Okay? And the religious acts which bring the creature into contact with his creator. But understand, you need to be submissive to Allah, but you do that via a scholar. Okay? Now, notice they say mu'amalat signifies relations between individuals. They're kind of polite about it. That's euphemistic. They don't tell you it's actually transactional behavior. Now, submissive, if we look at the meanings of submissive, we go to a dictionary. It says allowing yourself or willing to be controlled, inclined or ready to submit, or to yield to the authority of another, unresistingly obedient. That is what submissive means. Now, understand, you will listen to, I hear atheists constantly, you see them in the comment section. Religions are just designed to control people. Yeah, well, Islam most certainly is. It meets that criteria 198%. It does. Understand, submissive means allowing yourself to be controlled. Right? Now, let's look at Quran 6:18. Allah is a forceful subjugator. We're talking about Ibn Khaldun, very, very famous Muslim. Quran 6:18 says he is the subjugator over his servants. Ibn Khaldun says in the Muqaddimah, Allah exercises forceful domination over his servants. Notice how this is translated in the Muqaddimah. Okay? All atheists should be opposed to Islam. Yeah, I agree. Now, in the Muqaddimah, this is a very, very famous book on history, right, written by Ibn Khaldun. He translates this passage a little differently. Allah exercises forceful domination over his servants. It should be known that after the removal of the Prophet, a religious group must have someone to take care of it. Cause the people to cause the people to act according to the religious laws. He urges the obligations imposed upon them. The human species must have a person who will cause them to act in accordance with what is good for them. He refers here to commanding the right and forbidding the wrong. You know, that verse I mentioned in the beginning, calling to what is good, and who will prevent them by force from doing things harmful to them. Okay, so who is this Jedediah Ingeberg? Someone, Jedediah Ingeberg, do me a favor, just ban that person. It's Jedediah Ingeberg, that's a spam bot. So understand, he must prevent them by force from doing things harmful to them. Well, what is harmful? It's what these Karens decide is good or bad for you. Okay? Okay, look, I'm going to just take that person away myself. Oh, they've just been put in hiding. Thank you. Okay, now, such a person is the one who is called ruler. In the Muslim community, holy war is a religious duty because of the universalism of the Muslim mission and the obligation to convert everybody to Islam by persuasion or by force. Make a note of this word persuasion here. Okay? Therefore, caliphate and royal authority are united in Islam, so the person in charge can devote available strength to both of them. So there's no separation between religion and warfare, religion and state, religion and law. Other religious groups did not have a universal mission. Holy war was not a religious duty to them, save for the purposes of defense. The person in charge of religious affairs in other religious groups is not concerned with power politics. Among them, royal authority comes to those who have it by accident, and in some way that has nothing to do with religion. Not because they are under obligation to gain power over other nations, as is the case with Islam. Islam is under obligation to gain power over other nations. They're merely required to establish their religion among their own people. So understand, Islam is a deen. It is required to establish the religion by persuasion or by force. This is not what we would define as religion. And of course, I'll go back here for a second. Let me do this again. Islam is a lot of things, okay? And everyone is concentrating right here and thinking, I'm sorry, but you think you're geniuses because you're looking at, I've read a Quran verse. I'm sorry, but no. Okay, moving on. Now, the sources of the law. So we've got the purpose of the law, right? Muslims avoid law just like they avoid bacon, but Stephen, that's the truth. I have invited dozens of people to come and talk to me on channels on new. They will always have an excuse. They'll start saying, well, I don't trust you because you're gonna ban me, you're gonna shut me up, you're gonna talk over me. And I'm like, look, buddy, just come on. We'll have rules, we'll let you speak, I'll have someone else moderate, we'll have whatever, and they'll have nothing but excuses. And they'll start blaming me and accusing me of doing things that in the future that could never have happened because it's in the future, but they'll find a reason, they'll weasel out, okay? And they won't, but anyway, so Islam seems awfully focused on worldly power for religion of people striving for Jannah, exactly, but that's how they achieve their Jannah. Now, there are two main source categories for discovering the law: the revealed or the root sources. Now understand, these are the revealed sources. It's very important to think of them as the revealed sources. The Quran and the Sunnah, which is the Hadith and the Sirah. Then you've got your practical sources. Okay, this is your ijma, the scholarly consensus. This comes first. Once these had been exhausted, it's like once they'd squeezed all the blood out of the chicken, right? After they chopped off its head and poured out the blood, once they'd done all of that, right, they needed to do something with all the parts. Understand? Maybe that's a bad analogy, but whatever. But the ijma is the scholarly consensus. This is critical to Islam, what the scholars have to say. That's why they always ask you, have you consulted a scholar? Yes, I did. I actually did. Yes, most certainly I consulted them. Now, Lloyd, if I understand these laws correctly, we should let the Abduls kill each other due to their own laws. Look, they do, like everyone argues about stuff. I mean, please, man. Some people like coffee, some people like tea. You know, it's just how it is. You argue about little things like that, right? Some people like pineapple on their pizza. That'd be me. Some people don't, right? Now, understand, though, that they agree in enough things. And part of the squabbling that you see, I think, is a distraction designed to make you think that they do not have a consensus. They most certainly do. This consensus, this ijma, is critical to Islam. Now, and it is enforced. They enforce this. Now, so after the ijma, right, the scholarly consensus on what these two things mean, okay? This is the scholarly consensus. This is the final interpretation. You have ijtihad, independent reasoning, and qiyas, which is comparison or analogy. So there's several comments that have just come in, so let me see what these are. Give me 1 second. You should get Al-Qawanin al-Fiqhiyya. It's Maliki standard as Hedaya to Hanafi fiqh, which has the juicy stuff and is only available in physical, volume 1 as PDF. Thanks for that. Yeah, look, understand that many of these books are behind paywalls. They're very hard to get. It's, what is Sira, Vagabond, Sira is, think of it as the Gospels of Muhammad. They call them the biographies of Muhammad. They contain his political and military activities. But think of these as the Gospels of Muhammad. Just like Jesus has Gospels, these are the Gospels of Muhammad, his warfare, his daily interactions, his political activities that he conducted, the way he dealt with people. So, and these are the stories of also, they capture the miracles of Muhammad, the miracles that Allah forgot to put in the Quran, that these guys then wrote 250 years later. They wrote a bunch of stories about the hundreds of miracles that Muhammad did that failed to make it into the Quran. So the followers cannot debate because they cannot tell the truth. They have to deceive and lie. So, yeah. Okay, so now moving on from this. Now, ijma, according to the Encyclopedia of Islam, in law, it is the third, but in practice, the most important of the sources of legal knowledge. It is the unanimous agreement of the community, they mean the scholarly community. It is the unanimous doctrine and opinion of the recognized religious authorities. Okay? Now, there's a thing called ijtihad mutlaq, right? Talking about independent reasoning here. In law, it is the creative act of ijtihad, or reasoning, through which the founding imams derived the revealed sources, a systematic structure of law. So these imams, the founding imams of the schools of fiqh, the four imams, they used absolute reasoning, ijtihad mutlaq, okay? They used absolute perfect reasoning to derive the structure of law from the revealed sources. The revealed sources, the Quran and the Sunnah, right? What you would typically call the Hadith. However, mutlaq, let's look at what does the word mutlaq means. It means absolute. So these four scholars did absolute reasoning. They did perfect reasoning, unquestionable reasoning. Understand? This is what they did. Now, the four roots. These are the proofs of Islam. Now, these things that I've just mentioned, the Quran, the Sunnah, the ijma, right? The Quran, the Sunnah, the ijma, the ijtihad, and this analogy. These things are the four roots, what they call the proofs of Islam. And the proofs of Islam refer to the proofs that the mujtahids, right? These are the top scholars, rely on when they deduce and describe the rules of Islam. And these proofs are the Quran, which is divine scriptural revelation. The scholars became Allah, Cogito says. And Andrew Martin says, see shirk, yep. Now, then two, Sunnah, oral tradition of Muhammad, Hadith plus Sirah. We'll see that shirk is part and parcel of Islam. Three, you have the ijma, the consensus of the jurists. Then four, the qiyas, juristic, logical argument or comparative analogy. Think of it this way, it is deducing a judgment for a case based on similarities to a case found explicitly in the religious texts. Is there an example that we can compare to, and then from there deduce how to act in this current situation? How do we apply this idea in this example? It's not explicit somewhere, but is there a case similar that we can utilize as an example? Right, I need to open a window. It's getting really hot in here because it's like -7 outside. That's -7 in human, not in Fahrenheit. Okay, in Fahrenheit it's probably 6 feet 3 inches cold. Right, so now differences, Sharia versus fiqh. So guys, am I making sense so far? Is this all making sense? Are these transitions logical? Because I need to refine this for my talk next month, so I need to be sure that I've got this right. So now, what are the differences between these words, Sharia and fiqh, which we hear sometimes, right? The Sharia is very broad and very general. This word broad is actually a legal term. It's very important to them. What is broad? Okay, this is actually very important for the scholars. Whereas fiqh is very narrow, it focuses on specific issues. So the broad, the general, the absolute understanding, the understanding of everything versus minute details. Fiqh focuses on narrow, minute issues, specific rulings. And then, is anything in Islam a sin apart from shirk, sunny sleep past? Technically, there is nothing that is sacrosanct in Islam. Every rule can be broken. Everything. Everything, literally everything. Now, Sharia cannot be abrogated, cannot be changed, cannot be annulled. This is very important for apologists to understand. The Quran has been abrogated. The Hadith have been abrogated. And I need to clarify here. Newer Quran verses abrogate older Quran verses. You should be familiar with that. New Hadith abrogate older Hadith. However, do understand that new hadith also abrogate older Quran verses. So where we have a Quran verse that is not abrogated by a newer Quran verse, it is abrogated by a newer hadith. New verses can also abrogate an older hadith. Okay, hadith can abrogate the Quran. For instance, how many prayers are named in the Quran? 3. There's a 4th that is mentioned in the Quran. However, I see that, okay, however, there are no 5 prayers in the Quran. I've asked many Muslims over the last few years to please show me where in the Quran the 5 prayers are listed. They cannot. They will waffle, they will dodge, they will lie. The 5 daily prayers come from the Sunnah. They come from the Sharia. Understand? This is the Sharia. Sorry. This is the Sunnah. This is the Hadith abrogating the Quran. There are numerous examples. You can go check with the scholars. They'll tell you. Numerous examples of Hadith abrogating the Quran. The prayers, the 5 daily prayers, the fundamental pillar of faith in Islam, doing your prayers. Okay, the Shahada and the 5 daily prayers. This shows that the Hadith can abrogate the Quran. Now, the fiqh has limited adaptability based on new information or perceived need. That's something. So Sharia law, fiqh equals proper implementation, and takes a detailed look at things like loopholes, relevant laws that affect the fiqh of said law. Exactly. Okay. Right. Andrew Martin says, I came across one Muslim apologist aligning claim 2 prayer plus 3 prayer in Quran made 5 prayer. Yeah, they'll come up with anything. I know. It's amazing. Now, the Sharia is derived from the Quran and the Sunnah, but the fiqh is derived from the Sharia. The Sharia is derived. Now, think of this. Think of the Quran and think of the Hadith, for argument's sake, and think of the Sirah as flour. Maybe this is not the best analogy, but let me try. The Quran is flour, just flour that you're going to bake bread with or whatever. Then you've got butter and you've got milk, okay? And you dump them in a bowl. Now, the thing is, with that flour, butter, and milk, you can bake bread. You can bake numerous kinds of bread. You can open a bakery, okay? Because of it, you might decide to open a bakery. Now, the bakery is what they had to make many kinds of bread. And then, of course, they made cakes, they made savories, they made biscuits, they made... Go to a bakery, there's 100 different kinds of things. Now, the Quran and the Sunnah was used to create all of these things in the bakery. But, you see, so you no longer need to examine the flour because you know what it's used for. They've already got all these creations. They've made all of these amazing things, right? These hundreds of different things you can eat. These many different things to sustain you. So the Quran has just become just it's a basic ingredient. They no longer need to figure out what it does. They've already figured out what it does. They understand, so they don't need that anymore. It's no longer as relevant as it used to be. Okay, now scholarly consensus, ijma, and the 4 integrals. So for this, we would need to go to the reliance of the traveler. Islam is a yeast infection. It probably does. So let us go to the reliance of the traveler. And I need to go to page 41. And we'll discuss the 4 integrals. This is section B 7.0. So guys, I'll go for like another 10 minutes and I'll call it a night. So let me see. Okay. Scholarly consensus is the agreement of all the mujtahids of the Muslims existing at one particular period after the Prophet's death about a particular ruling regarding a matter or event. Okay, it may be gathered from this that the integral elements of scholarly consensus are 4, without which a ruling is invalid. So Ahmed says, of course, muftis, they don't admit this in front of people. They call them awam, or normal people, so they don't know. We will discuss it. I'm going to get into a lot of stuff as we go through this. So now, understand here, okay? So the integrals of scholarly consensus are 4, without which is invalid. So that a number of mujtahids exist at a particular time. This is in the past. This cannot be changed. That all the mujtahids of the Muslims in the period of the thing or event agree on its ruling. And that's the ijma, the agreement, regardless of their country, race, or group. Okay? Notice, non-mujtahids are of no consequence. That's you and that's the lay Muslim. Each mujtahid presents his opinion about the matter in an explicit manner, whether verbally, or by giving a formal legal opinion on it, or practically by giving a legal decision in a court case. This would be case law. Okay, the Roaring Lion says I should write a book. I might one day. All mujtahids agree on the ruling, for if the majority of them agree, consensus is not effected, no matter how few of those contradict it nor how many those who concur. So when the four necessary integrals of consensus exist, the ruling agreed upon is an authoritative part of sacred law that is obligatory to obey and not lawful to disobey. Nor can mujtahids of a succeeding era make the thing an object of a new ijtihad, because the ruling on it, verified by the scholarly consensus, is an absolute ruling which does not admit of being contravened, contradicted, or annulled. Now understand, the Quran has been contradicted. The Quran has been abrogated. Certain verses have been annulled. Technically, they've been annulled. The Hadith have gone through a similar process. They've been abrogated. They've been contradicted, contravened, and annulled. The Sharia is permanent. It is what can never be contradicted. It is what can never be annulled. It is what can never be abrogated. Therefore, it is the final perfect understanding of Islam, beyond what is in the Quran, beyond what is in the Sunnah. You have no idea what verses are abrogated. How many? Of the 6,000 verses in the Quran, I'd guess that 200 are left. Because when you read through the Sharia, you don't come across a lot of verses. What is in the Sharia is what is still valid. Understand? And when they want to make a caliphate, Sharia is how they're going to run the caliphate. ISIS ran its caliphate strictly according to Sunni fiqh, Sunni Sharia. Okay? The Taliban are running their caliphate according to their version of the Sharia. Okay? So understand exactly. Andrew Mott says they use Quran and Hadith to make the Sharia and then idolize that. So let me see how far I need to go on this, because I don't want to. Okay, 41 to 43. So I just need to do a couple of pages. So the proof of the legal authority of scholarly consensus is that as Allah has ordered the believers in the Quran to obey him and his messenger, so too he ordered them to obey those of authority among them, saying, "You who believe, obey Allah and obey the Prophet and those of authority among you." That's in the Quran. Such that when those of authority and legal expertise, the mujtahids, agree upon a ruling, it is obligatory in the very words of the Quran to follow them and carry out their judgment. Allah threatens those who oppose the messenger and follow other than the believer's way. Whoever controverts the messenger after guidance has become clear and follows other than the believer's way, we shall give him over to what he has turned to and roast him in hell. The second evidentiary aspect is that a ruling agreed upon by all the mujtahids in the ummah is in fact the ruling of the community, and the community is divinely protected from error. My community shall not agree on an error. So these mujtahids are perfect. Okay? Allah is not wont to make my community concur on misguidance. Therefore, that which the Muslims consider good, Allah considers good. What the mujtahids say is good. So understand that morality is not what your concept of natural law or your instinct, your conscience tells you. It is what the Sharia tells you is good. Let me just read some comments here. Really good highlight. No new ijtihad. Exactly. Ijtihad, the doors of ijtihad are closed. The fiqh can be adapted as needed, but we'll discuss that at another time. I need to go into the specifics on that. So let me see. They use the Quran and Hadith to make Sharia and then idolize that, and I'd agree with that, Andrew. When you remove the cursing of everybody else, all you have is the rest of the Quran is covers. Cogito, that's the truth. So how much of this info, so Sleepyhead Luke says, so how much of this info does the average Abdul found on YouTube have? It seems like the type that call into shows like CP and RC are still pretty much Quran-based believers. No, they're not. I would say, now here's the thing, I have been asking myself that particular question for years. I honestly think they know more than they're letting on. My honest appraisal of this question, after many years of going through this, I think they know much more than they let on. They are hiding it because Sharia is a secret. They're not allowed to share it with non-Muslims. To reveal it is also a crime for them. It is treason. It is assisting in the undermining of the Islamic agenda. And it is treason. So for many reasons, they do know. Now, they might not know the word-for-word rulings, but as part of the cultural knowledge, I believe they do. And in fact, in terms of the Sharia, some of the Sharia is actually compulsory. It's obligatory for Muslims to learn them. That doesn't mean they all have, but it is actually an obligatory thing for them to actually learn some of the Sharia. At least the gist of it, the spirit of it, if not the letter of it. We're going through the letter of it, and we'll be discussing the spirit of it. But I think they know much more than they let on. They do know, and I think they just hide it. I think they lie about it. They conceal it. So that's what I think. Okay, this is why all humans need to oppose the Sharia in Islam, correct? Obey the caliph even if it was Ravenhead means black man. Said no, correct? People keep saying Abdul don't know, but they do. Like Tom Cruise knows what Scientology is about. It's a cult. Exactly, Sunny Sleeper. That's the truth. Sleepyhead Luke, many play dumb and say Quran and Sunnah only, Quran and Sunnah only, but sola scriptura Christians will have a bad time using these arguments as it's the same thing they do. I agree with you, for that's exactly what I said. Unfortunately, many Protestants become Quran only Christians the moment you say, well, you know, and then they'll make up their own meaning of what the Bible says. I mean, like, so I read it, I think something different, and then no, but the Holy Spirit spoke to me. It's like, you sure was the Holy Spirit? You maybe need to go and see your shrink about voices in your head. Like, seriously, man, seriously. You know, exactly. It's exactly the same thing Muslims do. There's no difference because, no, but Muslims, you see, they're lying when they become Quran only because they become apostates when they do that. So what happens is they have authority, they have tradition, they have the mujtahids to fall back on. They've got all these different things that they fall back on. And they're lying because they know that they can fool Protestants by saying, I'm Quran only, and the Protestant goes, I'm Bible only. And then like, yeah, got you. So, okay. Okay, so the validity of scholarly consensus is the following, given with its commentary. Allah's hand is over the group, and whoever dissents from them departs to hell. So there you go, meaning that whoever diverges from what the overwhelming majority concerning what is lawful or unlawful, and on which the community does not differ, has slipped off the path of guidance, and this will lead him to hell. So now people will tell you, well, but the scholars can be wrong, the scholars can differ. Of course, but there are certain things that have been established, they've been written into the doctrine. These are the final beliefs. These are black and white, unambiguous, written down for eternity. So the scholars agree on 75 to 80% of the doctrine. There's disagreement over about 20% of the doctrine. This disagreement is over things that are of a cosmetic nature. Like when you pray, when you're standing and praying, do you have your hands by your side? Right? Do you have your hands by your side? Do you have your hands up here? Those are cosmetic issues that do not affect the doctrine, do not affect the understanding of Islam. Those are literally just cosmetic issues. They do not affect Islam in any way. Those are the things where they differ. But where they agree very much, and that agreement is the ijma. Okay, I'll leave this here. I'll pause this here. Actually, let me check if I've missed anything, just to be on the safe side. Other than the four Sunni schools of jurisprudence, do not necessarily play a role in scholarly consensus. Dismiss the other schools, just those four schools. There is scholarly consensus on it being unlawful to follow rulings from schools other than those of the four imams. I am going to pause here, okay? It is unlawful to follow rulings from schools other than the four imams, right? Those schools do not matter. I hope that's been clear. So guys, I'll pause here. I hope this has been instructional. Hopefully it's been educational. And I want to mention this. This actually is, there's a lot of early scholarship from the 1800s, then the mid to late 1800s and the early 1900s that is fantastic, that we've forgotten about. Okay. So Islam on, this is a fiqh stream, not a Christology stream, exactly. So, okay guys, so Islam, the only saying of Jesus is far better than Allah. Yeah. Yeah, I know. Who is someone making a noise here? Islam only is clueless. Dude, if you're such, you know, all of you come on my channel with big mouths, big mouths, and have plenty to say in the comment section. You've got plenty to say in the chat. Yet not one of you, every single one of you cowards, has failed to meet me, to not have a debate, just a discussion. We'll read through the Sharia, we'll bring up the rulings, and you can discuss. Okay? And when are you going to come on my channel? Let's set up a date in January, Islam only. You come on my channel and we'll discuss the Sharia. We'll read through what the very best scholars of Islam have to say about Islam. So these are the absolute mujtahids, the mujtahids mutlaq. When are you going to come on and have that chat with me? Are you going to make excuses like every one of your cowardly friends? Are you going to run away like every single one of your friends has for a very long time? So yeah, but anyway, on this point, so Islam only, are you coming on? So when are you available? Shall we set the date for the middle of January? Would that be suitable for you? We will go through the Sharia. We'll read through the major works of fiqh. Let's see. He's not answering. If he doesn't answer, just come on. Sharia, Islam only. Let's see. Yeah, so TM Crossball says, yeah, I mean, for instance, yeah, Islam has extensive doctrines of lying, extensive doctrines teaching Muslims how to lie, when to lie. And in fact, lying is obligatory, but also, and when they don't lie explicitly, they are taught to use deceptive language because this is considered religiously precautionary. Okay, so Islam only has not answered me, so yeah. Again, like all of his friends, they are far, far too cowardly to actually come and talk with me. We'll just read through what the top scholars of the schools of fiqh have to say, and they will not. Okay, guys, so guys, yeah, I'll just quickly run through this. Analysis of Islam as a system derived from its creed. So you can see here, you've got, notice Muhammad has 201 names and titles. Allah has 99. Fascinating stuff, right? Muhammad has more names and titles than Allah. Wonder who's the big guy here. Okay. And of course, yeah, let me see. This author here, I'll get into this another time, he says that not one of these people here, Bukhari, Muslim, Tirmidhi, Abu Dawud, Sunan an-Nasai, right, from Nasai and Ibn Majah, these guys flourished nearly 3 centuries after Muhammad. It's like they come very, very late. So yeah, anyway, so this is something interesting going back. I'll discuss this. I'll pause here, guys. Hopefully you learned something. Any last minute questions before I go? Okay, anything last minute before I call it a night? Because thank you very much. What I'll do is I'll do this probably maybe tomorrow night. I will do the rest of it. I'll discuss the slides that I've done so far. So whose chart is this? Oh, this chart is from this chart. Let me just double check where this is from. Give me 1 second. This is from a book called Arabia, the Cradle of Islam. Studies in the geography, people, and politics of the peninsula with an account of Islam. Oh, it's by Samuel Zwemer. He died in 1952, lived from 1867 to 52. This, I think, is like 1912. It's like a 1912 book. It's really interesting. And I will go through this in the future. But this guy took Islam apart by understanding this is the doctrine, okay? And then, so basically, he sort of figured out what Islam is all about, right? So he talks here about the creed, how Islam is structured, what it's about. So this knowledge is known for a long time, but it's not something that we talk about today, and it really is worth actually going through in the future. And he's got another chart, which is also very interesting, about the development of Islamic law. Okay, but notice actually he says here among the Sunni, okay, sorry, yeah, this is it. Sorry, he's got a second chart on the creed. But notice we have here, Muslims believe that 104 books were sent from heaven in the following order. To Adam, 10 books, Seth, got 50 books. Notice the interest in Seth, not the first 2 sons of Adam and Eve, but Seth. The Gnostics also had a thing about Seth, but that's something for another day. Enoch, 30 books. Abraham got 10, and then Moses, David, and Jesus. And then Muhammad got the Quran, right? And then, of course, you've got here, he says among the Sunnis, you've got the Ijma and the Qiyas. This is well known. So you've got here the Sunnat, okay, that he mentions here. Then you've got the Ijma, the Qiyas, and then among the Shias, the doctrine of the 12 Imams, beginning with Ali. And then, of course, you've got these books here. So they discuss this at length. But yeah, I'll pause. Let me just continue, just so. One last thing. The Mujtahids Mutlaq, why they're called the absolute experts? Because in the Sharia, the absolute expert in Islamic legal reasoning is a Mujtahid Mutlaq, such as Abu Hanifa, Malik, Shafi, Ahmad. So according to the Islamic scholars, these men are absolute scholars, perfect scholars, right? So understand, their reasoning is absolute. Their reasoning is perfect. Now, of course, until the modern era, when the random Muslim in the comment section suddenly became a PhD in Islam, although he doesn't know anything about it. But yeah, so that these guys are absolute scholars. So guys, I will pause here, and yeah, I think that was everything. So guys, good night. Maybe I'll do this tomorrow night or the next couple of nights. We shall see. It is, what day is it today? It's Wednesday. So maybe tomorrow I will continue with this. I hope that was useful and that you learned something. And I need to ban someone else from the channel. Why is it that I always get... That is so weird. You know, that my channel gets bombarded by these bots. Anyway, guys, thank you very much. I hope that was helpful and that you learned something. And hope you guys had a great Christmas. If I don't see you, showing the divine. Yes, Andrew Martin, these guys are protected from error. In fact, they we'll go into this another time. So yeah, guys, please do like, do share, and guys, thank you very much. We shall see you maybe tomorrow night. Otherwise, over the weekend, I'll continue with this. So have a good night, and thank you guys for all the help in the chat. Much appreciated. Thank you. Bye bye.